So I just picked up this Yamaha F25. I got it for 300 bucks. It was locked up. The previous owner had put some oil in the cylinders and tried to crank it and couldn't get it going. So what I did is I just put it up on the stand, tilted it up, got the spark plugs out. There was still plenty of oil in there. I added some more just to be safe, and then just started working on that flywheel nut with this big breaker bar. And there was some resistance, but just went back and forth. And now check this out. Thing glides right along. That thing's all loosened up. It feels great. I can hear the valves going and everything, so I think I'll just exercise it a bit more, and then we'll do a compression test and see what we got. That's very poor. 50 PSI. Let's try it again. Maybe 55 that time. Try the lower one. Equally bad. So I learned that this motor has an automatic decompression valve, which makes it hard to get accurate compression readings. The manual says you're supposed to fire it up and warm it up and then do a compression test, and I guess try to pull the cord exactly the same way each time. But in any case, I think I'm just gonna pull the head because this is some of the oil that came out. Trying to get the camera to focus. Started puking out of the spark plug holes, and it's full of grit and like rust and stuff. So if I get the head off, I'll be able to clean all that stuff out of there very effectively. I could fire it up and just blast it all out of the exhaust, but I think it'd be better to clean it. The other reason I want to pull the head is there's a tiny bit of corrosion right there. So it looks like there is some salt water seeping by the head gasket. So it looks like it's got to get done. That's not really enough to like warrant a new head gasket on its own, but it's a sign that it's kind of on the way out. So I think the reason it locked up to begin with is that head gasket is leaking some water into the cylinders, and that's why they're all rusty in there. So for that reason, the fact that it's full of junk and there's evidence on the outside that it's leaking. Another reason is it doesn't look that hard either. You can get to all the screws and pop this thing off. A friend of mine who did it said it was like a 10-minute job. So we'll time it and see if I can get it done in 10 minutes. We'll see. So to get the head gasket off, it looks like I've taken the cover off, and it looks like it can actually just slip this timing belt off. So I'm not gonna mess with the flywheel unless I have to. I have these alignment features aligned, but I also just put my own marks on the belt. So I got that tooth marked there, and then under here I have the belt, the tooth, and actually the block there all marked. I don't intend to turn the lower end at all once it's disassembled. All right, so a couple minutes later, and we just took off one fuel hose, the fuel filter. Fuel pump is here. I'm gonna leave that on. The coil came off. Also, I didn't bother disconnecting any of the leads. It's just gonna tuck over here nicely out of the way. Get this cover off, and I believe we have to drain the oil also before we actually get the head off. I'm leaving the belt until last. All right, so we get that cover off, and now we're just gonna get these fasteners loose. There's 3 over on this side to get to. And I'll just loosen them all before I take it all the way out. And then we'll get those 6 in there next. So those head bolts were a little too much for my impact. I got it with this. They're very tight. I just went around and loosened them all each quarter turn and then got them all slack now. So we'll slip that timing belt off and then pop this thing off. So we just pulled this head off and yeah, look at all that sludge in there. Oh boy. It's a bunch of rotten goop. So yeah, it's very gritty. Taking it apart, it really doesn't look that bad. Maybe this thing wasn't leaking. Maybe it was just being stored in the basement. There's a tiny little trace there of a leak. I think that's the one that I saw from the outside. Let's take a look at the block. We got a matching layer of goo on the pistons. And everything else looks pretty good that I can see. That mating surface is very clean. And again, yeah, just a tiny little trace of corrosion in that corner. So this thing's going back together today. And I bet we get it running. All right, so we got it all back together. The head bolts torque, no problem. It's always nerve-wracking to see if they're gonna go soft on you. But went back together easily. Ended up pulling the flywheel just to check the timing. Once it was together, I didn't really trust the little marks I'd made, but it was actually all set. It was all good. So filled it back up with oil. I picked this tank up on Marketplace. Paid way too much for it, as it would turn out. But I think it's gonna work. Fire it up, so let's see if she runs. After we spent a couple hours cleaning out the carb, I think it's a runner. All right, so we ran the motor a bit, and now I think it's still warmed up. And I'll just show you what it's like to start it. Now that I got the carb cleaned and gave it a bit of an Italian tune-up. All right, here we go.